topic you wanted to start? Oh, training. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope time hasn't been so heavy on your hands so far. Well, I tried to be very concise and to the point. What I've been talking about the same thing from different lenses so far, so it's going to be more of a sum up of everything with a specific highlight on assessment. Some of you are aware of Jerry, the department head, my co-author actually was not able to make it today, so I'm going to have to do it again on my own. My name is Rehab. I'm an instructor from Alexander College. Some of my students actually call me Rehab, and I have to keep telling them I'm not an addict. Rob is fine. Rehab, those of you who know, right? Right, without further ado, I'm going to go and quickly start talking about the purpose of the study. This is actually a very short report of the preliminary stage of a longitudinal study we are in the middle of doing. And the results I'm going to show you is actually reflecting what we did last year in April and July. The purpose of this study would be discovering the landscape of English for academic purposes, just giving you a very short historical background of EAP, how it came to being, some specific gaps in EAP pedagogy, especially with the focus on assessment and assessment tools that you can use in EAP and EAL contexts, and of course how to get the learners engaged. And then, of course, how we can think about the concept of learner agency. I can see that so many of the presenters today have been talking about how to take ownership of learning, how students can be engaged in what they are doing. So I'm going to introduce some activities that we actually tried last year about how we can help students exercise their own agency, take the ownership of their own learning process, how to collaborate using multimodal approaches. So the key themes and the theoretical foundations will be the first part of the presentation. I'll try to be really quick on that. Learner agency and co-production EAP grading on online teaching, which is actually the concept introduced during the pandemic in 2021 of online. This is something that seriously informed our study in particular. And of course, some of the assessment challenges in EAP, something that they had personally faced before and still grappling with. And some action-based strategies that we can actually employ in our own classrooms to make sure that the strategies and the instructions are very understandable, easy to follow, not only for the instructors and for the practitioners in this field, but also for the students to understand exactly what they are required to do, and then to reduce complaints. Right. So gaps and areas for improvement in EAP. Some of the empirical findings I'm going to share with you today about the studies that we had. Over 60 students, and some of the proposed strategies for enhancing EAP learning. All right. So everyone is actually very aware about the global context of EAP and then how immediately after the Second World War, actually English becoming a dominant language of instruction in the global economy came to forth, and then both those countries were actually dependent on English language, especially the Soviet bloc nations, trying desperately to reduce their reliance on Russian empire. Actually decided to use this language in order to get into the global economy and be part of academic community. Well, everyone knows that this is actually the tool and the language that everyone needs nowadays in order to be successful in first world countries. Language is the language of English is the language of instruction, the language of work. And of course, this is the criterion that determines success in those areas. So economic and technological influence actually drives English learning. This is something that Bradley actually came up with first. And then, of course, how English dominates academic research, and obviously, this is the dominant language of publication. So, this much is actually a very brief background. It's there's a lot of details into the history about this, so I don't want to be headed about that. Well, the research, the key research, actually, there's a lot, but these are the main things that informed the study that we did. So, we specifically drew on the use of authentic materials in ESP, referring to Bora's notion in 2017, and then how authentic materials should be, how relevant they should be to what the students are supposed to do outside the classroom walls, so that they can create meaning, make meaning of whatever they are supposed to do within the classroom. Andriana in 2014 talking about the challenges in ESP. What are some of the real challenges that the students continue having, and then they desperately come up with a solution to those. And then, of course, how online teaching comes to solve that problem, right? We actually try to reduce the TTT, the teacher talk time, and then we try to be very simple, understanding, very clear in giving instructions to the students, whether for asynchronous or synchronous classes. Whether you're relying on the traditional style of teaching, or whether you're focusing on using a lot of technology, even if you want to introduce AI or whatnot. Well, Comline actually is something that can bridge that gap. And by Comline, we're talking about the blending between exercising creativity using online platforms of learning and teaching. I'm going to show you the next slides how some of the technological softwares can help us do that. Well, Hanks in 2021 actually also talked about learners as co-researchers. So the idea is actually that of pushing learners, the instructors being in the center of the learning environment, how we can encourage learners take a participatory role in their own learning. All right, and I think that speaks volumes to the idea of taking ownership of the learning. So we don't want the students to be receptive, just passive consumers of knowledge. It goes to one ear and out the other, right? How can I change my strategies in the classroom so that the students live with it? If they learn that if they realize the importance of, for example, critical thinking, which is actually very useful for every second of their lives, day in, day out, not specifically within the classroom, then they see classroom as a platform to exercise that skill, which they need to do, to have with them. Well, how we can get students to actively contribute to the research, all right? One of the major problems that the students actually have, especially I as an instructor, when I get to read the assignments, well, regardless of how much AI I can detect, well, I cannot see how this student is actually capable of defending his or her work, right? It's okay, I give you the benefit of the doubt. Everything has been done by you, very well done. Now, defend the work, explain to me what have you done, right? What is the relationship between this paragraph to this paragraph? Can you talk about the grammatical structures you've used? Is there a specific reasoning why you have constructed your paragraph this way? Okay, in regards with the requirements of the task. And of course, we realize that by just explaining verbally how the students should do this, everything is actually going down the drain. So what we need to do is to get them involved through some multimodal approaches, right? So for example, posters, discussion boards, how to get them involved in asking questions, receiving feedback constantly, and then how they feel like they are part of creating something. So we're actually trying to encourage collaboration. We want the students to be co-investigators of whatever they're doing, and then we want them to be part of the process of accumulating the knowledge incrementally from the very beginning to the very end. Well, so Comline teaching, as I already mentioned, is actually giving us some opportunities to be able to merge the power of exercising creativity using online pedagogy. And then by online pedagogy, we're talking about some of the softwares that we can use. Some of these softwares could be already inbuilt in Harman Canvas. Some of them are separate. The students can actually, install the free versions. The functionality would be a bit limited, but still they have that amount of functionality that they can use to exercise that creativity that we wanted to. Well, and of course, getting them to work together to analyze the sources. So what we actually realized, one of the significant highlighted findings during the research was that the students are not actually engaged with the material. So we realized that there is a large gap between having access to the material and being actively practicing literacy skills. Right? Well, in what follows, actually, I'm trying to show you how the differentiation between the two made us realize that we need to do something more practically in the classroom so that the students are capable of showing their ability that they are really doing something about their own learning, right? And this is not something temporarily for a short time. This is something that they actually learn and they can walk away with outside the classroom. This is the skill that they can use. And well, it is actually some sort of a difficulty between what we actually try to help them to do academically within the classroom setting, and then how we can connect this to whatever they have to do outside the classroom. It's actually one of the difficulties that we're still thinking about. But again, the assessment is something that was a very big problem for us. So the biggest challenge that we had was about the assessment, especially when the grading period came up. The students were actually very vocal about the grades. The reason? Number one, they had no idea about the requirements. Number two, they had lots of confusions, they didn't ask anything. Right? So, what should I do in order to simplify everything, in order to make myself clear, first of all, to make things easier for myself, and to make myself understood fully for the students? The challenges in evaluating academic style and, of course, conventions. Conventions are there. Well, the students are still grappling with, different aspects of academic conventions they're supposed to follow. But again, when it comes to evaluating academic style, we actually decided to use rubrics. And what made that confusion worse was the use of rubrics. How so? There are so many areas in the rubrics that are overlapping. The students were actually hesitant about which grade they were supposed to get. Was it 3 or 4? They were not capable of understanding the differentiation between those grading scales. Well, the integrated assessment tasks, the combination of reading and writing, the literacy skills for that matter, was actually something that we did at the beginning. We asked them to run the C.R.A.A.P test together. The currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and the purpose of the sources. So we wanted to make sure that they understand how they need to interact with multiple sources, how they can, find relevant information, and how they can synthesize the bits of information that are relevant to the line of arguments, and then how they can put them in a logical manner together so that they can complete their assignments. Well, but again, we realized that the rubrics that we were using, or I was personally using in my own courses, were actually very confusing because of those, hazy areas. And then we decided to come up with the concept of ceilings. For those of you who are interested in assessment and testing, or for those of you who have some skin in the game, so to speak, well, when we're talking about ceiling, the ceiling is the upper mark in a test that actually examines the ability of the student and how well they can perform. All right, but again, we had to be very careful about the ceiling effect, because sometimes we need to apply low ceiling, sometimes we have to apply high ceilings. So this is the first thing that we decided to do in order to make that rubric clearer for the students. And of course, we came up with 6 or 7 pages of interpretation about what those descriptors mean. All right. So during the discussion boards, the students were supposed to sit together and discuss their strengths and weaknesses. All right. And they were able to provide peer feedback, and they received grades for that. This was something that actually really helped them to clearly understand the requirements of the assignments, and then they were capable of completing their tasks in a more academic and more satisfactory manner. Well, what you can see here, these are the 3 main written assignments that we actually used. The first one is comparison and contrast essay, followed by cause and effect. As you can see, incrementally they are increasing in terms of the level of difficulty. They have been intentionally designed in such a manner because we wanted to make sure that the students have got enough skills so that they can provide more complex argumentations when they are supposed to write their arguments, the counter arguments, and the rebuttals using the other techniques. All right? And as you can see on the left side, the average actually shows a consistent behavior or pattern. It means that the students are not actually doing that bad, but clearly it's obvious that there are some certain areas that they are still grappling with. And those areas were mainly having to do with the mechanics. By mechanics, we're talking about the structure and conventional rules, academic conventions. All right, so logical reasoning, all right, how they can consult the sources and then how they can synthesize and paraphrase ideas in a logical manner, how they can avoid logical fallacies in their lines of arguments and in paragraph development and the way that they extend their argumentations. So these are the areas that they were still grappling with. But again, interestingly enough, what was actually very significant was that the majority of the students were capable of writing their thesis very clearly. The organization was logical, right? And then all the other aspects were well taken care of. And we got to see a lot of profiles. We had both jagged profiles and flat profiles. In all of those cases, the lowest score was the mechanics. And that was interesting. Well, so this can actually imply lots of things. That's going to be outside the scope of this study. So we're going to go into depth, probably in the question and answer stage, if time allows. But again, this is the results of what we did with the students, the student performance histograms that actually advise us. So the rubric design and the assessment rules, like I said, the description of the rubrics, right, were made more clear. The thesis clarity, organization, language, and the mechanics were the 4 major criteria that were that the students were actually graded against. And like I said, the mechanics was the lowest one. Well, the perceptions of the rater, the instructor in this case, and also the perceptions of the students who are supposed to receive the grades, right? So it's about, it's going to actually affect the student life. So they need to have a clear idea about what those descriptors mean. So we're actually going to design a test, a questionnaire to, ask for the perceptions of the students, how they feel about using rubrics. And we're going to intertwine that into a mixed method approach in test validation to see how valid the rubrics could be in the next stage of the research. But of course, so I've realized that, of course, aligning rubrics with the classroom practice is actually something very important. And then this is something that needs to be very meaningful for the students. It shouldn't be a far cry from what they are supposed to do in the classroom and then what they see or read in the rubrics. Well, as you can see, the literacy assessment insights were actually very interesting. So the first row, as you can see, is the page views. As you can see between April to probably mid-July, we can see consistent increase, and that's probably the due date for the assignments we're approaching, right? So you can see that the page views were good, but participation remains significantly low. So this means that students are viewing something, but they are not mentally actively practicing literacy skills, right? So, right. Well, in order to avoid this large gap, well, we decided to use discussion boards, and we also tried to use Bloom's taxonomy to exercise all those 6 critical thinking layers so that the students are capable of, first of all, making meaning of what they are supposed to learn, make meaning of the literacy skills that they need, exercise critical thinking, and of course, make sure that they know how logically the argumentation should be arranged. Well, the strategies to improve those aspects, the conline adaptations, this is where actually the conline adaptations came forth. We decided to use some online collaboration and visual aids softwares. Discussion boards were already there, so we decided to do some mind mapping, especially. So some assignments were done in groups at the initial stages in terms of mind mapping and generating ideas at least, and then they would be supposed to complete their assignments individually. And then there were some collaborative reading platforms, especially the articles, the journal articles that they were supposed to read. They had to run the C.R.A.A.P test, and they were supposed to complete a questionnaire on those 5 elements, C.R.A.A.P, and come up with some examples from those articles, how the C.R.A.A.P test actually informed their research, and then how they decided to use that particular article and paraphrase ideas from there into their own assignments. Well, so in practice, like I said, those 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy is actually somehow revamped for online classrooms here, from remembering stage to creating, but actually exercise in the classroom. We decided to provide some authentic assessments, asking the students about their jobs, what they're doing, and then how they can exercise critical thinking, designing the prompts for the assignments, including the rubrics, and not only make them accessible, but also encouraging the students to interact reactively with those rubrics. But they have to be capable of interpreting what they understood from the rubrics, and then how they could grade their own work. This is actually done with the help of the peers, so that everyone is actually satisfied with the grade that they received based on evidence. We actually tried to do this because we wanted to promote academic integrity online, and this actually has to do with the C.R.A.A.P test that we decided to include in the process of getting prepared for the assignment completion, communicating detailed instructions and clarifying expectations, and also promoting interaction and collaboration. The last 2 items, as you can see here, were actually done through some of the online softwares. We actually used ClickUp, which is very nice, right? I'm not sure if ClickUp has got a free version, but again, they usually have a shadow version, so to speak, for a limited time. Students are able to use it, at least if they want to practice what we mean by getting engaged into the learning process and how they should exercise agency. Evernote actually is the most popular one. So as you can see, everyone is able to come up with ideas. We used ClickUp here for a number of topics where the students were actually supposed to come up with some ideas, and they type their phrases, their ideas, and everything would suddenly appear on the screen. So that was very interesting for sharing ideas and learning from each other at least. And of course, the implications up to this stage, the implications for the future. This is also something that might inform the rest of the research we're going to do. Addressing persistent gaps, the citation challenges. We are actually going to add some descriptors onto the rubric that is relevant to the citation challenges. There is already some, but they are very vague. All right, so we need to have those particular ceilings that can differentiate the low performers from higher performers. And when you're talking about the ceilings are actually written in a bold font, which means that the other sub-descriptors do not apply. If they meet the ceiling, this means that they are sitting very nicely at that descriptor. And the assigned grade is actually given to them. Well, we're going to go and study the sociocultural considerations in designing assessment tools. That's going to be, again, another aspect of the research, which is not complete. And, well, some conclusion and key takeaways, which is actually a wrap-up. It's been very interesting to see that so many other presenters have been talking about the same thing from different lenses, right? So we're talking about how technology is actually reshaping or practice of teaching and learning. But of course, we need to know how that practice is to the benefit of the students as learners, and then how we can make things very simple, not only for the students but also for the practitioners or educators in terms of interpreting and in terms of explaining the requirements of the assignments, and then how the assignments could be done in groups so that the students will have a sense of accomplishment at the end. So they should be aligned to course learning outcomes, they should be authentic, and they should reflect real-life tasks as much as possible. The students are, as long as they are studying, the job is studying. So that's one of the things that they need to know. One of the requirements of the academia is being able to follow the academic rules. Well, they should be accessible and inclusive for all learners, and this reflects the sociocultural background that we've already talked about. And then you're going to consistently encourage academic integrity by clarifying the C.R.A.A.P test, and then how this could be dissected into more manageable bits for the students to practice more. And then they should be very well, clearly communicated with the students in terms of the expectations or requirements of the task. Well, I guess 1 minute is up. All right, thank you very much. Not bad. Okay, well, welcome questions or thoughts, probably.
I have a question. As far as the discussion forums go, I know those also are a challenge, especially if they're asynchronous. You have a choice of either requiring it, in which case you get a flurry of activity right before the deadline where students post their thoughts and don't actually have the discussion.
Traditionally, yes.
Or if they're not required, you get very little engagement. What was your experience using the discussion forum?
Traditionally, I used to give them feedback forms. All right, and then, well, that was actually very challenging, but the feedback forms were given to the students with a 5 or 6 items, I guess, covering those items in the rubric, and they were supposed to sit together, and then I gave them so for example, groups of 5 students, right, gave them the papers that they had submitted. They were supposed to read and provide feedback, and based on whatever they thought, they were supposed to read the rubric and then give feedback. And then they shared their understanding about whatever they thought about the quality of the assignment. And then I added something to that assignment individually. It actually took 1 whole week for that, at the stage of feedback, peer feedback. And then we had to spend that much time because I needed to convince every single student about the grades. That's one point. The second point is that we wanted to be very transparent and fair. Number 3, they needed to see how logical everything is. They sometimes feel like that the teachers do not grade the answers, they don't grade assignments. They just, there's this sometimes, I don't know, probably culturally, it might be, but based on their own experience. But again, I actually, showed them that everything, whatever decision we are actually making is evidence-based. From the very beginning of explaining the requirements of the task to the very end, the period during which they want to apply for a grade challenge, for example. So everything is based on evidence. They provide the evidence themselves, right? So they cannot fight against their own evidence. And then we try to convince them that this is the way that things are working. More recently, I have decided to actually do this on campus. The students, share their ideas, they give their opinions, with a specific focus with some voice presentations that actually is supposed to accompany those written assignments. And then we try to, we covered some lessons on public speaking. We even talked about the super segmental aspects of language, the intonation, the melody of the voice, how the intonation goes down, where should it lie, and all these things, how nervous the students were during the presentation, the voice quality, all these kinds of stuff. but the presentation is actually the portion that they liked best because they knew that, even if, they graduate and then they want to go somewhere and find a job, they need to speak sometimes, give presentations. So this is something that this is a skill that they actually need to live with for a long time. All right, thank you very much.